So many professionals out there secretly believe that they are just, well, bad at AI. You probably know the feeling. You sit down, you look at that blinking cursor, you type in your very first prompt, and the result you get back is average. Just kind of mediocre, right? It reads like a textbook, it completely lacks nuance, and it certainly doesn't sound anything like you. But Joy Chen has this fascinating premise that we are going to deeply explore today. She argues that this average output is not a technical failure of the system, and more importantly, it is definitely not a failure of your own technical skill. What it actually signifies is something much simpler. We just haven't translated our desires into a clear assignment yet. Welcome to this explainer for episode 5 of the AI Survival Guide for Non-Tech Professionals, created by JoyFuture.ai. I'm your host, and today we're moving from simply understanding high-level AI concepts to actively, practically applying this technology in your day-to-day work. You are going to learn a highly practical, executive-level method for delegating work to AI. And the absolute best part of this approach, you can do this without memorizing any complicated secret prompt formulas. We're going to build a foundational skill that scales with you. Okay, let's dive right into this.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Prompting is delegation. 2. The 5-part framework. 3. A real-world case study. 4. 3 common prompting mistakes. 5. AI and leadership. And finally, 6. Your AI survival skill.
Let's start with Section 1. Prompting is intentional delegation, shifting your AI mindset.
To build a solid foundation for everything we'll cover today, we really need a fundamental paradigm shift in how we approach this technology. When you open up an AI interface, you are not coding. You are not programming a machine in the traditional technical sense. Instead, I want you to imagine that you are delegating work to a brand new team member. Now, this team member is incredibly eager, they are impossibly fast, and they have literally read almost everything ever written. But they desperately need a proper, structured brief from you to actually do their job well. Think about it this way. If you walked up to a human team member in your office and simply said, "Hey, do some research and make it good," what exactly happens next? Well, a seasoned employee is going to immediately stop you in your tracks and ask for clarification. They'll want to know, okay, what kind of research? Who is the audience for this? By when do you need it? And what exactly defines good in this context? A less experienced employee, on the other hand, might just run off, guess at your intentions, and bring you back an entirely inconsistent or useless result hours later. Yet, for some reason, highly capable professionals sit at their keyboards, give AI equally vague instructions, and when the AI produces a generic response, they treat it as a test of the technology's intelligence. We blame the machine. But just like a human employee, AI requires you to make your important decisions visible up front. A strong prompt does not actually need to be a 10-page essay. It doesn't even need to be particularly long, but it absolutely must make your intentions, your boundaries, and your goals exceptionally clear. What are we trying to accomplish? Who will use the output? What constraints apply? If you don't answer these questions, the AI will simply guess. And here's the reality: AI guesses default to the statistical average.
Moving on to Section 2, the 5-part brief framework, a managerial playbook.
So if we are treating AI as a team member, we need a managerial playbook for assigning tasks. The quality of your AI assignment actually rests on 5 specific pillars: outcome, context, inputs, standards, and process. I want you to think of this as your delegation brief. It is absolutely not a rigid mathematical formula where if you miss a single comma or use the wrong verb, the whole thing just breaks. Not at all. Instead, it is a structured way of thinking about your work. When you hit these 5 beats, you transition from just hoping the AI magically guesses what you want to guaranteeing it knows exactly what you need. It forces you to pause and define the parameters of success before the execution even begins. Let's systematically break down each of these 5 pillars, starting with the very first, and arguably the most important one, defining the outcome.
There is a massive difference between defining an activity and defining an outcome. Let's look at a typical everyday prompt. It might just say, "Summarize this report." Now, that describes an activity. The AI knows what action to take. It knows it needs to make the text shorter. But it has absolutely no idea why it's taking that action. Because it lacks a why, the AI will just guess what the most important parts of the report are. It will likely give equal weight to the background, the methodology, and the conclusion, resulting in a perfectly average, incredibly boring summary. But consider this alternative approach. Summarize this report so the executive team can decide whether to fund a pilot. Right there, that defines an outcome. It gives the AI a concrete target. By adding that simple phrase about the executive team and a funding decision, you are fundamentally changing how the model processes the text. You are helping the model select what truly matters for that specific goal. It will instantly realize that it doesn't need to summarize the data collection methodology in deep detail. Instead, it needs to extract the costs, the risks, the timelines, and the projected return on investment. You have given the activity a distinct business purpose, and the output will immediately reflect that heightened level of strategic focus.
Let's look at another contrast that really hits this point home, this time for a communication task. If you ask an AI to write a LinkedIn post about AI leadership, you are once again only defining an activity. And what happens? The AI will spit out a wall of generic corporate buzzwords about synergy, innovation, and navigating the digital frontier. It adds no real value to anyone's feed. But watch what happens when we define the outcome. Draft a LinkedIn post that helps non-technical executives recognize one mistake in AI adoption and gives them one action to take this week. Suddenly, the AI has a real job to do. It has a specific audience, non-technical executives. It has a specific pain point to address, recognizing a mistake. And it has a specific deliverable, one actionable takeaway. The absolutely crucial point here is this. Before your fingers even touch the keyboard to write a prompt, you must know exactly how the output will be used in the real world. A phenomenal rule of thumb is to force yourself to finish this sentence in your head. This output will be used to, if you cannot finish that sentence clearly, the task is simply not clear enough to delegate yet.
Okay, once we have a clearly defined outcome, we move to pillars 2 and 3, context and inputs. Context is the environment of the task. It encompasses the audience, the situation, the history of the project, or the strategic goals behind the work. Inputs, on the other hand, are the raw materials the model should use to actually do the work. These are your meeting notes, your survey data, source documents, or internal company policies. Now, a very common mistake leaders make here is thinking that providing context means giving the AI a comprehensive 10-page biography of their entire organization. It absolutely doesn't. Relevant context is simply the specific, targeted information that will actually change the AI's answer. For example, if you're asking the AI to draft a board brief, the relevant context is the board's known risk tolerance and the commitments made in the previous quarter. If you are drafting a sensitive customer email, the context is the specific history of that client's account issues. And when it comes to inputs, well, this is where you prevent the AI from hallucinating or just making things up. You must tell the system exactly which sources are authoritative and what to do when information is missing. You might explicitly instruct it, use only the attached survey data for all factual claims. If the attached data does not support a conclusion, explicitly label it as a hypothesis or ask me for clarification. That level of rigorous instruction forces the AI to rely on your ground truth, not its vast, generalized internet training.
The fourth pillar of our framework is all about establishing boundaries and defining quality. We break this down into standards and constraints. Standards describe the subjective quality you expect. Instead of just lazily saying, make it professional, you should specify the exact tone and reading level. You might say you want the tone to be direct, calm, highly accountable, entirely free of marketing or promotional language, and understandable to someone without a technical engineering background. This tells the AI how to sound. Constraints, on the other hand, establish strict, objective boundaries. Instead of saying, keep it short, you should specify exactly what you need to fit your workflow. A strict 300-word limit, exactly 3 distinct sections, and a 1-sentence final recommendation. Crucially, constraints also dictate what the AI must not do. This is where you tell it what bold claims to avoid, what jargon to eliminate, or what internal, proprietary information it absolutely must not disclose in the public-facing version of the document. And a quick, highly practical note on formats, because this is a trap a lot of people fall into. Formats are constraints too. You should only ask for a specific format when it actually serves the intellectual work. People love asking AI to give them bullet points because bullet points feel incredibly efficient and easy to read. But if you are asking the AI to compare 2 highly complex software vendors, asking for 10 bullet points will severely flatten the reasoning. It hides the nuance. Instead, you should set a constraint that the AI must use a structured matrix or a comparative table. By separating your subjective quality expectations from your strict boundaries, you maintain absolute control over the final product.
Finally, pillar 5 is process. And honestly, this is an absolute game changer for complex, high-stakes work. The golden rule here is simple. Never ask for the final product in one giant leap when the task involves ambiguity or uncertainty. If you ask an AI to write a massive proposal from scratch in a single prompt, the AI is forced to make dozens of strategic assumptions behind the scenes just to get to the finish line. And if it makes the wrong assumption on paragraph 2, the rest of the document is entirely useless. Instead, you must break the work into stages. First, provide your materials and ask the model to simply restate the objective and identify any missing information. Once you clear that up and are completely aligned, ask for a high-level outline or perhaps 3 different structural options.
Then, you step in as the human manager and select a direction. Only after you've approved the outline should you request the full draft. And even then, that draft should be followed by a critique and revision phase where you push back on weak arguments. Stage generation gives you control at the exact moments where an incorrect assumption by the AI would be expensive, frustrating, or time-consuming to fix. It ensures that the AI isn't quietly making critical strategic choices just because your prompt skipped over them.
All right, let's move to Section 3, a real-world AI case study, preparing a leadership meeting.
Let's take all this theory, all 5 of these pillars, and apply it to a highly relatable, everyday workplace scenario just to see the difference. Imagine you need to prepare a critical leadership meeting for next week. If you use a vague, effortless prompt like, create an agenda for our AI meeting, what are you actually going to get in return? You will get a wildly predictable, entirely generic list. It's going to say, Item 1, Introductions. Item 2, Project Updates. Item 3, Open Discussion. Item 4, Next Steps. Now, yes, it is technically an agenda, but it adds absolutely zero strategic value to your workday. It hasn't saved you time. It has literally just shown you what a meeting looks like in the abstract. It is the exact equivalent of an employee who rushed off without asking any clarifying questions and brought back a template they found on the internet.
Now, applying our 5-part framework looks entirely different. Listen to the structure of this intentional brief. Create a 60-minute agenda for the executive team to decide whether to launch a customer service AI pilot. Participants are the COO, CIO, General Counsel, Head of Customer Service, and CHRO. Use the attached pilot proposal and risk memo. The meeting must resolve 3 questions: target use case, pilot owner, and approval conditions. Allocate time for customer impact, employee workflow, data privacy, measurement, and decision-making. Put pre-reading at the top. For each agenda item, name the decision or output, and with a decision log and assign next steps. First, identify any information missing from the source documents before drafting. Wow, right? This brilliantly illustrates the entire framework in action. It defines a specific outcome, deciding on a pilot. It layers in context, the exact executives in the room. It demands specific inputs, the attached proposal and risk memo. It sets rigorous constraints, allocating specific times, naming the decisions, and demanding a pre-reading section. And it initiates a process by asking the AI to identify missing information first. But here is the most important takeaway for any professional listening to this. Even with this masterpiece of a prompt, the human leader still has to review the output for realism and strategic blind spots. Is 60 minutes actually realistic to get alignment from the General Counsel and the CIO? Does this specific agenda flow create enough space for productive disagreement? The AI massively accelerates the construction of the agenda, saving you an hour of drafting, but the leader remains entirely responsible for the meeting's ultimate design and success.
Okay, let's jump into Section 4, 3 common prompting mistakes. What to avoid. As you start writing longer, more intentional instructions like the one we just reviewed, there are a few traps you might naturally fall into. Here are the 3 most common prompting mistakes that frequently trip up non-technical professionals as they start experimenting with AI delegation. Mistake number 1 is overloading the prompt with exaggerated roleplay. We have all seen the viral advice online telling you to start your prompts with, "You are the world's greatest multi-award-winning corporate strategist with 40 years of experience." Look, providing a relevant professional perspective is totally fine, but giving the AI a grandiose, imaginary title does not magically replace the need for hard facts, clear criteria, or specific context. Substance always beats roleplay, for sure. Mistake number 2 is asking the AI to make a critical decision before you have defined your values. Let's say you upload 10 resumes and tell an AI, choose the best candidate for this job. When you do that, you are hiding massive, complex questions. Best according to what specific job-related criteria? Based on what evidence in the text? With what fairness safeguards in place? You absolutely have to define your organizational values and decision frameworks before you ask a machine to execute a decision. And mistake number 3 is polishing language too early. We are naturally trained to care deeply about how our prose sounds. So users will spend 20 minutes tweaking a prompt to ask the AI to make a single paragraph sound more elegant or dynamic, without ever checking if the underlying strategic framework, the logic, and the evidence are actually sound. Always prioritize structure, substance, and factual accuracy before you worry about linguistic elegance. You can always fix the tone in the final step.
Section 5. AI and Leadership Responsibility. Joy's Perspective. Let's zoom out for a minute here, because learning this framework isn't just about getting a slightly better draft out of a chatbot on a Tuesday afternoon. It is really about how we operate as leaders in an increasingly technology-driven workplace. Joy has a crucial insight here, and it is incredibly profound.
AI makes the quality of your delegation entirely visible. The prompt reveals the manager. Think about that. If we sit down at our computers and find that we cannot explain the outcome, if we don't know who the audience is, if we can't point to the right evidence, or if we can't defy the standard of success to the AI, well, the ambiguity is not in the machine. The ambiguity is entirely in our own thinking. We didn't actually know what we wanted. We were hoping the machine would do our critical thinking for us. That is exactly why practicing intentional prompting can actually dramatically strengthen your overall leadership skills. It absolutely forces you to clarify exactly what you want. It strips away the comforting illusion that we can just lazily outsource our strategy and judgment to technology. The best prompt in the world isn't the one with the most impressive technical vocabulary. It is the one that creates shared understanding, clarifies business goals, and fiercely preserves human responsibility.
So, if this framework is so powerful, how do we scale it across an entire organization? We do this by creating reusable briefs for your team's recurring tasks. If your department constantly does market research, prepares for weekly client meetings, writes sensitive customer communications, runs quarterly data analysis, or reviews HR policies, you shouldn't be reinventing the wheel and starting from a blank prompt every single time. That's just inefficient. Instead, you can build structured, highly refined delegation templates for these specific tasks. These reusable briefs should be baked right into your workflows. They should automatically include your organization's approved sources, specify the prohibited uses of AI, mandate required human checkpoints, and clearly state the conditions for when the AI must escalate an issue to a human manager. Scaling these well-crafted briefs across a company creates a powerful baseline of operational consistency. And it does this without turning your valuable employees into mindless prompt copying machines. Because the goal of a template is to help people think clearly and consistently about the 5 pillars we discussed, preserving their mental energy for high-level judgment, rather than removing their judgment from the process entirely.
Finally, Section 6, your AI survival skill, intentional delegation. We want to leave you with something highly actionable that you can use at your desk today. Your survival skill for this week is exactly this, intentional delegation. Before you hit send or submit on any important prompt, I want you to force yourself to pause and ask these 5 practical questions. Just pretend they're on a sticky note on your monitor. 1. What outcome or strategic decision should this work actually support? 2. What specific context, audience history, and source material will change the AI's answer? 3. What does good objectively look like, and what strict constraints or formats apply? 4. Where should I deliberately pause the process to review the AI's assumptions or choose a strategic direction? And 5. The most critical question of all, who owns the final judgment and the actual professional use of this output? Walk through this checklist every single time you engage with these tools for serious work. Because writing exceptionally clear instructions doesn't make the AI responsible for the final product. It makes your own responsibility as a professional infinitely more effective. You aren't shifting the blame to the machine, you are actively managing a powerful resource.
And that wraps up our comprehensive deep dive for today. As you move forward this week, remember to treat the technology not as a magical slot machine where you just hope to pull the right combination of words, but as a highly capable team member awaiting your structured, intentional delegation. In our next Explainer, Episode 6, we are going to level up once again. We'll be moving beyond just a single prompt and looking at how to design full, multi-step, AI-assisted workflows with integrated human checkpoints. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. But before we go, I want you to ask yourself this. If your next prompt reveals exactly how clearly you manage and define success, what is it going to say about your leadership? Understand AI, apply AI, lead with AI. Thank you so much for joining us for this Explainer from JoyFuture.ai, and we will see you next time.